with your sermon? Okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure, like, if you were going to be retelling the entire thing.
I'm not going to retell the entire thing. I've got a couple of paragraphs, but it's good to have this background.
Okay.
That I built from.
Okay, cool. All right. Perfect.
Yeah, and you're going to do QR for roads.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I think a good idea too, if you guys would do it after that, a few bars on my road, so we can check this out. It said they were muted, which was surprising.
Amazing. All right. He was checking, yeah. He's thorough. I like it.
That's funny.
And just so you guys know, people, I can print out an order of service. You guys have to do. Okay, good. Yeah, so during the story, Jen was going to ask me the same, but those elements are going to be. So, I don't know. I don't know. So, you're going to pause our.
Do you want people to be standing for amazing grace or staying seated?
They can stay seated.
And I won't tell them to rise.
Jim, I think I saw a battery charger in the choir room. Sorry.
Really?
Yes. Should I grab that? Do you want me to?
Does it have batteries with it? Maybe rechargeable batteries?
I don't know. Let me go see. Let me look real quick.
I mean, I still do have a big pack of regular batteries in there.
Okay.
I just need to get it under the lid or there it is. No, I guess it's in the drawer. It's in a cardboard box. Or maybe it's No, that's not a problem. We did introduce Roxy and got her on the schedule, but you met her a few weeks ago, so, and that was about it. I did mention I'm gonna be gone for a couple of months this summer, and we're supposed to say that I have some extra responsibilities during that time. I basically gonna ask some of the people who have been in my previous swimming diving classes to give us a, so I think we can build from
Good morning, and welcome to the UU Church of the South Hills, also known as Sunnyhill. We're delighted that you could join us for this service. Our mission here at Sunnyhill is to create a more just and compassionate community within and beyond our walls. My name is Krista Stanley, and I serve as a worship associate for this congregation. If you're a newcomer or a visitor to our congregation, please go to sunnyhill.org and click on the button that says New to Sunnyhill so you can receive more information about our congregation, and you can also receive our weekly email newsletter. If you're joining online today, please say hello or good morning in the comments on Facebook or YouTube. We'd like to hear from you and extend a warm welcome to you as well. Today's service is the third of 4 services based on the hymn Amazing Grace. Today we will reflect on the many dangers, toils, and snares of our current era. How can the concept and practice of grace help us meet these challenges and prepare us for an unknown and uncertain future? Our opening words were written by Maureen Killeran. Welcome, you who come in need of healing, you who are confused or have been betrayed. Welcome, with your problems and your pain. Welcome, too, your joys and your wonderings. Welcome your need to hope, your longing for assurance. Instead of answers, here may you find safety for your questions. Instead of promises, may you find community for your struggles. People with hands and hearts to join you in engaging the challenges and changes of our day. Please join me in saying the words to light our chalice. We light our chalice as a symbol of warmth and illumination. May the warmth of this place radiate outward toward all who need healing, and may the light we kindle illuminate truths, both comforting and discomforting, that need to be revealed.
Good morning. We're going to sing our opening hymn in just a moment. Jen, find Buddy. I got nothing this morning. Please rise and bow to your spirit and/or spirit to join us in singing our opening hymn this morning, Gather in Spirit.
Gather the Spirit, harvest the power. Our separate fires will kindle one flame. Witness the mystery of this hour. Our trials in this light appear all the same. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit of heart and mind. Seeds for the sowing are laid in store. Nurtured in love and conscience refined, with body and spirit united once more. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion, and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. Gather the Spirit growing in all, drawn by the moon and fed by the sun. Winter to spring and summer to fall, the chorus of life resounding as one. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion, and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. Please be seated.
Sometimes, when something truly terrible happens, in our world or to someone we love, it can be challenging to find the words to say, even if you are someone who always knows the right words to say. That was the case in June of 2015 in Charleston, South Carolina. The tragedy that took place began in a church with a rich history. The Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church is often referred to as Mother Emmanuel. It was founded in 1817 and is the oldest AME church in the South and one of the oldest Black congregations in America. Mother Emmanuel Church was standing through harassment and raids in the early 1800s. It was burnt to the ground shortly after, and its members met in private until it was rebuilt after the Civil War. In 1886, a powerful earthquake struck Charleston, and the church was demolished once again and then rebuilt once again. Through the 1900s, Mother Emmanuel saw both tragedy and triumph, from hosting Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to being damaged by Hurricane Hugo. The church has been a steadfast reminder of continuing to lead with grace against the odds. In June of 2015, Mother Emmanuel faced tragedy once again, this time from a young man with hatred in his heart. When President Barack Obama was asked to give the eulogy to one of those that lost their life that day, Senator and Pastor Clementa Pinckney, he said that he would speak, though he no longer had the words needed. During that awful, challenging time, he recalled the notion of grace. He said that the notion of grace was a recognition that we are fundamentally flawed and weak and confused. He said, "We don't deserve grace, but we get it sometimes." So on that day in June, the president stood in front of thousands, gathered in the basketball arena of my alma mater in Charleston, South Carolina. Instead of using his time for words of sorrow or of argument for change, the president sang Amazing Grace. His remarks from that day went like this. This whole week, I've been reflecting on this idea of grace. The grace of the families who lost loved ones. The grace that Reverend Pinckney would preach about in his sermons. The grace described in one of my favorite hymnals, the one we all know.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see.
So on that day, when no words could accurately describe how the president or our nation was feeling, the president sang Amazing Grace. And now, any children who are with us who are at least 5 years old are welcome to join us in the main room. We're going downstairs today, back to a classroom. So exciting. So we're going to be heading downstairs for our religious education class. We're going to be singing the children out to Amazing Grace this morning. Please join us.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Twas grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. A young man came to a house of prayer. They did not ask what brought him there. He was not friend, he was not kin, but they opened the door and let him in. And for an hour the stranger stayed. He sat with them and seemed to pray. But then the young man drew a gun and killed 9 people, old and young. In Charleston, in the month of June, the mourners gathered in a room. The president came to speak some words, and the cameras rolled, and the nation heard. But no words could say what must be said for all the living and the dead. So on that day and in that place, the president sang Amazing Grace. The president sang Amazing Grace. We argued where to lay the blame, on one man's hate or our nation's shame, some sickness of the mind or soul, and how the wounds might be made whole. But no words could say what must be said for all the living and the dead. So on that day and in The president sang Amazing Grace. My president sang Amazing Grace.
Good morning. My name is Angela Klein, and I'm a member of the Pastoral Care Team, whose responsibility it is to reach out to members of Sunnyhill going through challenging or significant life events, whatever they may be, offering the loving presence that binds our community together. If you want to get in touch with us, you may contact us directly or call the church office or send an email to pastoralcare@sunnyhill.org. Each week at this time in the service, we share joys and sorrows submitted by members of the congregation. We share the things that we are celebrating as well as the things that we are mourning, so that they do not need to be held alone. Joys and sorrows may be submitted online from our website. After each joy or sorrow that I read, please respond by saying, "We hold you in our hearts." I have a sorrow from Ellen Vey. Her brother Daniel died suddenly, and he had 2 daughters, ages 12 and 17. To Ellen and her family, we hold you in our hearts. We have a joy from Micheline Stabile and Wendy Bell. A joy to share, we recently welcomed a 7-year-old dachshund rescue, Charlie, into her new forever home. She brings us great joy, even in these troubling times. To Micheline, Wendy, and Charlie, we hold you in our hearts. Let us bear in mind all these joys and sorrows, as well as those that are held too closely to be shared. All we have carried through the seasons of our lives has brought us here to this place, made sacred by our coming together. May we hold all that we carry in the warm embrace of this loving community.
I invite you to join me in the spirit of meditation or prayer. It is difficult to open our inmost selves to one another in a world filled with fear, with distrust, with suspicion. It is difficult to allow ourselves to be vulnerable when there is so much to guard against, so much violence, so much hatred, so much danger. It is difficult to let ourselves fully experience our emotions at a time when there is so much we'd rather not feel. Such intense and persistent dread and disgust and dismay. Yet we yearn to open our hearts, our souls, our very being to the love we need, the caring and compassion we crave. Let us pause for a moment of silence as we hold together our fears and apprehensions alongside our hopes and longings. May fear burn away like the morning mist. May our souls unfurl their wings and take flight. May the exquisite rose of love at the heart of this community open so widely that it engulfs and embraces all our fears and failures, all our hopes and heartaches with the warm breath of compassion and the restorative heartbeat of justice. Amen. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. As mentioned earlier, today's service is the third of four based on the hymn, Amazing Grace. 2 weeks ago, I spoke about the concept of grace, what it means, and how it might be experienced and practiced. Last week, we delved into the history of the hymn, how it came into being, and how it came to occupy a place of prominence in American hymnody. This week, I want to focus on how and why the concept and practice of grace can be especially important and relevant during times of crisis and despair. In other words, I want to talk about those dangers, toils, and snares that the song mentions. And having gone through the past 2 years, we do know something about dangers, toils, and snares, don't we? Over the past 2 years, more than 6 million people have died worldwide as a result of the pandemic, with total COVID deaths in the United States approaching the 1 million mark, and ongoing COVID deaths in the US currently totaling 1,100 per day. Over the past 2 years, following the police killing of George Floyd, there has been an increased awareness of systemic racism and racist violence and the many ways it continues to plague this country, in large part because of an unwillingness on the part of so many white people to acknowledge or deal with the consequences of centuries of racism in our country. Over the past 2 years, we have seen increased attacks on LGBTQ people, both physical attacks and attacks on their rights and protections. It's been clear that trans people, particularly Black and brown trans people, have been targeted for violence and targeted by certain lawmakers who have passed a record number of discriminatory anti-transgender bills. Over the past 2 years, we have seen an attempted insurrection and ongoing threats to democracy in the form of laws and practices that effectively disenfranchise large numbers of people, accompanied by bigotry and violence toward people of color, Asian people, Jews, and others. And if all of that is not enough, over the past month or two, we have witnessed in Ukraine violent territorial conquest unlike anything seen since World War II, with continued bombings and killings of civilians and an accompanying humanitarian and refugee crisis that will likely grow even worse in coming weeks and months. We know something about dangers, toils, and snares. We know something about grief and loss and despair, more than we want to know and more than we might have imagined possible not that long ago. And it's when we're in the midst of these challenges, these dangers, toils, and snares, that we are most in need of the concept and practice of grace. The practice of making space in our lives for the experience of the goodness of life itself, even when, or especially when, things are unimaginably tough. I remember experiencing a couple of moments of grace in pretty quick succession at the UUA General Assembly in Portland in 2015. The mood at that General Assembly was mixed as a result of two events that were in the news that week. The first was the mass shooting that occurred at the Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina, which was spoken of earlier, which left 9 people dead. The victims, all of whom were Black, had been participating in a Bible study group when the gunman, a 21-year-old white supremacist who they had welcomed into their church, started firing. The other event was the Supreme Court decision affirming the right to marry for same-sex couples as guaranteed by the 14th Amendment, a case whose outcome was not at all certain beforehand and which was decided by a 5-4 vote. Those of us who were at GA mourned the death of the shooting victims in Charleston and started working with renewed energy and commitment on issues related to racism and white supremacy. I remember gathering around television in one of the cafes at the convention center and weeping as we watched President Obama's eulogy, during which he sang Amazing Grace and warned us that we must not fall into a comfortable silence on the issue of racism ever again. And in the midst of this mourning and difficult work, we also celebrated when the Supreme Court's decision on marriage equality was announced. Spontaneous revelry broke out on the floor of the General Assembly, and a spur-of-the-moment dance party took place that night. Many of the people who were there at that GA had worked for decades for that moment, had marched and canvassed and lobbied and sweated and cried, working to bring that particular moment into being. I experienced both of these happenings as moments of grace, in part because I experienced them as a member of a larger body of people, as a member of a faith community that sang and wept and worshiped together. But it was also President Obama's singing of that song that seemed to create some space in that moment, that seemed to provide an opportunity to extend grace both inward and outward, that felt like the beginning of something like hope and healing. Several years after the fact, Valerie Jarrett told the story of how the president came to sing at the eulogy in South Carolina. As reported in the New York Times, Mr. Obama was on the Marine One helicopter leaving the White House en route to Andrews Air Force Base for his flight to South Carolina when he mentioned the thought of singing during the eulogy to Michelle Obama and Valerie Jarrett, their close friend and White House advisor. When I get to the second part of referring to Amazing Grace, I think I might sing, he told them, according to Miss Jarrett's account. Miss Jarrett recalled responding. Mrs. Obama, who was not particularly a fan of her husband's singing, was a little bit more pointed. Why on earth would that fit in? She asked. He tried to explain, I don't know whether I'm going to do it, he said, according to Miss Jarrett, but I just wanted to warn you that I might sing. He added, we'll see how it feels at the time. Many who watched him that day noted that he paused a long time before he began to sing. Miss Jarrett later recalled asking him, were you thinking about whether or not to sing? He said, oh no. I knew I was going to sing. I was just trying to figure out which key to sing it in. A number of people, journalists, historians, political scientists, speech and rhetoric experts, and others, have speculated about why the singing of Amazing Grace in that moment was so powerful. One of the best explanations I've seen comes from Sarah Kaufman, a Pulitzer Prize-winning dance critic and the author of the book, The Art of Grace, on moving well through life. Kaufman writes, grace is an ancient notion, and it has a kind of universal hold on us, whether we're religious or not. Many of us relate to the idea of grace as a comfort to the soul, as a form of love, a way to get through difficulty. Being human can hurt. It hurts because we are, most of us, compassionate creatures. We are linked to one another in deep and meaningful ways. We can hear about a senseless shooting in a church hundreds of miles away and feel our hearts drop to the floor. Kaufman goes on, But if we didn't feel this pain, we wouldn't also feel the comfort. Perhaps this explains why Amazing Grace, surely one of the best-known songs in the English-speaking world, is so uplifting. I find it has an uncannily graceful way of blending a verbal message of hope with the living sensation of it. I can't hear that song without feeling some stir of longing or resolve. Resolve, in fact, Kaufman says, is what Obama so expertly tapped into in the most powerful part of his eulogy. I don't mean his singing, which was actually quite lovely, or his voicing of a hope that we may all be worthy of God's grace. The capstone was the way he expressed his final wish, a wish for divine grace on the United States of America, pausing to place emphasis on united. That word, Kaufman notes, has had a force to make you shiver because of the way Obama had led up to it. One man's generosity, referring to Clementa Pinckney, who was being eulogized, one community's experience of pain, one overarching power urging us to find our best selves, and now one nation united in all of those: generosity, sacrifice, love. For that is indeed the most amazing grace, the kind that can bring us together in the shared experience of our own humanity, even and especially when being human hurts. The shared experience of our own humanity, even and especially when being human hurts. What a powerful description of the concept of grace. There are times when being human truly hurts, when pain is all around, when grief and despair cast a pall over all our thoughts and senses. And yet, in this precise shared experience of human suffering, this act of experiencing these challenges together, we might find something like a way forward. Through many dangers, toils, and snares I have already come. 'Tis grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. Among other things, these last 2 years have been an object lesson in grace. For one thing, with the various pressures and challenges that each and every one of us has experienced, it's been necessary to learn how to extend grace to others and to ourselves, to give everyone a little extra space for sometimes forgetting things or failing to follow through on things that would otherwise be remembered or done. COVID fog and pandemic fatigue are very real phenomena. We've all needed grace from one another during this time. I know that I have. I know that I have found myself sometimes faltering and failing in recent years, and I am grateful beyond words for the forgiveness and grace extended me by so many people, including some of you. We've also experienced short-temperedness and impatience, both our own and that of others, during this time. But it's those moments of grace that have sustained us and seen us through. Now that we're gathering in greater numbers in person again, now that the pandemic restrictions are being lifted and more people are venturing out to church and elsewhere, we are discovering again how important it is to be in one another's presence. After months or years of isolation, I believe we have developed an even greater appreciation for the power of human community. More than ever before, we are aware of our human need for one another, for grace-filled spaces of hope and healing, for connection that is experienced viscerally, experienced physically, emotionally, and spiritually. I hope and pray that in the coming weeks, months, and years, we will make space together for more love and more justice to enter into our lives and into our world, to create space for wholeness amid brokenness, to create in the face of many dangers, toils, and snares, space for grace to lead us home. May it be so. Amen.
Eyes and body your spirit to sing. I know I can. I know I can.
It's time for our morning offering. We don't have a designated offering for this morning, so our collection will benefit Sunnyhill and will help defray any operating expenses. If you'd like to make a gift via our online giving system, you can do so by going to sunnyhill.org and clicking on the button that says Online Giving, and then follow the instructions. Or you can give by text at 412-324-3130. Text the amount of your gift and the word pledge if you want your payment to apply to your 2022 Sunnyhill pledge. Otherwise, text gifts will go toward our general operating fund. You can also mail a check if you prefer, and you can find our mailing address on our website at sunnyhill.org. For those of you who are here with us in person, we'll be passing the offering baskets around in just a moment. Thank you, everyone, for your generosity. Please join me in saying the words for extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
I'd like to remind everyone that we are having coffee and conversation after the service, so please join us in the fellowship hall. It's mask optional as we begin to lift our COVID restrictions. And if anyone is new to the congregation, and by new, I think maybe anyone who's come to us in the past 2 years, we have red mugs so that you can identify yourself as new, or if you just feel like you're new and you want to be greeted as if you were new, take a red mug and we'll make sure that that happens. Also, next week will be our last week, as far as we know, with any masking requirement. At the end of next week's service, we're going to do a ceremonial unmasking, just to give you a heads up. If we don't like what we see, we'll put them right back on. But I think that we'll all be happy about it. For now, I'll close with these words. May the love that overcomes all differences, that heals all wounds, that puts flight to all fears, that reconciles all who are separated, be in us and among us, now and always. Go in peace.